are the Lit Ladies.
I'm Christie.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carissa.
Three writers and moms exploring how to live out our faith in our literary lives.
We span the country from the coast to the Midwest. And with different stages of life, careers, and favorite genres, we're sure to cover the literary landscape.
In every episode, we'll discuss books we love, reading life, and writing craft, using the Bible as our guide for beauty, goodness, and truth. New episodes drop every other Friday.
Hello and welcome back to the Lit Ladies podcast. We are so glad you are joining us today. And it's January, the start of the year, a fresh start, the time for New Year's resolutions. And if you're writers or readers like we are, it's the time of the year we talk reading goals. So we are dedicating this entire episode to our reading goals. What do they look like? Do we set them? Why or why not? And what are some of our goals? So we're going to kick it right off and start with the topic of whether you set reading goals for the year. So I am going to go ahead and ask that of Christie. Do you set reading goals for the year?
I set goals on Goodreads, but I don't really do it as like a competition completion thing. I just like to keep track of what I've read. And actually, when we were prepping for this, I went back and the most books I read in a year was 59 in 2021. I'm usually somewhere around the 40 to 50 mark, but I just like keeping up with it. But I've seen people post on social media this past week or so, and it's just been like 80 books, 100 books. I'm like, how do people read that much?
Impossible.
Well, okay, so I have a question about Goodreads. I think I'm on Goodreads, and at one point, I think all of my books were like automatically telling everybody on Goodreads what I was reading, and that felt weird to me, so I stopped that. So does Goodreads automatically track the books you're reading on your Kindle, or how does it work? That's my question.
I don't think so.
Mine
have
is
to
linked.
Mark it out.
So I'll say, yeah, so when I open a book on my Kindle, I think it'll even ask me if I want to put it on. I think mine automatically does. At the end of the book, it'll say, do I want to rate it on Goodreads? Do I want to write a review? But it does automatically link on the Kindle. Now, if I'm reading a hard book, then I need to put it in like am reading. Now, some people will do like the progression, like I'm on page 200 of 325. Yeah, I'm like, I don't care about that. So I just put that I'm reading it, and then I can be like, oh, I read this many books this year.
So you do go manually enter. Like if you read a hardback, you'll go manually enter it into Goodreads.
But it's good too, because when you or Carissa recommend books, they have different like subcategories. So it's read. So books I've already read is a huge list. Then they'll have books like to read. So if Carissa tells me, oh, I want you to read this book, I can put it on like the wish list kind of like to be read. Yeah. And then I can be like, what was that book Carissa wanted? And then I can skim back through it and be like, oh, it was that one. So it's kind of a way to keep track of, a TBR pile. So
yeah, that's how I use it. I don't even want to know how many I have on the want to read list. It's got to be like multiple thousands.
And do you go, like if someone gives you a recommendation, do you like go into Goodreads and write it down? Carissa?
Yes. Yeah.
You too?
Yeah, I was like, sometimes I will, or else I'll just text Carissa 32 times and be like, what was that book again?
Which works. Okay, Carissa, do you set goals?
Yeah, I usually do. The past couple of years, I've set a goal for 50 books a year, and that's including audio.
Okay.
And yeah, probably like two audio to every one actual book or ebook. Before that, before my kid, I could do like 25 like reading. It's like a book every 2 weeks almost.
Okay.
But I can't quite do that now.
Yeah. Kids change things. So I don't set goals. I never have, which I know it's weird, right? But several years ago, I had a girlfriend give me like one of those topical lists, like every month read this type of book. And I remember looking at it and thinking, I don't want to keep track of the books I read because I just want to read for like pleasure or escape. So I don't want to track them. I might be changing my opinion, but historically I have not. So
I think it's fun to keep track, but I think for me, just like the number goal is stressful because now I'm thinking, how many short books can I read to make sure I get to 50? And it's like, okay, this is stressful.
Novellas.
And I'm not reading the books that I want to read, which might be a really thick 1,000-page book or whatever it is. And then I'm just like choosing not to read it so I can get to my number. like, I used to love reading classics, which are longer, and like fantasy, and they're just like super long, right? But I'm like, no, I'm not going to be able to fit that into my reading goal. And so I want to read more of those.
It begs the question, like, what is the point of a reading goal?
That's
I think
true.
it just helps me keep track. Like, I don't see it as like I'm very competitive, but I'm not competitive with that. Like, if I don't meet my goal at the end, I'm like, meh. But if I look and I'm like, wow, it's been like 3 weeks since I read a book, I'm like, whoo, we need to take a break and read.
And you'll have 3-week chunks where you won't read a book?
I mean, not really, no.
Okay. So let's talk about goals this year. What does that look like for each of you? Carissa, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I think that I'm not going to set a numerical reading goal. And I just want to enjoy reading and read books that I want to read and not care if they're really long. So I have a bunch of classics still on my list. I just enjoy them so much. And I want to get back to reading them, and like, not all classics. But like, I enjoy reading them, and I feel like when I look back on my favorite books of all time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a classic. That one's a classic. That one's a classic. I'm like, I need to read more of these. I enjoyed them so much. Not all of them, but I just want to like take my time and just plod through them, even if it takes me a long time, and just be okay with that. Get back to reading some like thick fantasy that have been on my list forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about you, Christy? Are you setting a goal this year?
I think I set mine for 40.
Okay.
So that should be doable. I think I was at 45 this year.
And that's a mixture of genres. Like, it's not a specific.
Yeah, and that's what is so funny. I just posted on Instagram, like the pictures of like all the books I read that, Goodreads shows me. And so I just did screenshots of them and posted them. And I was like, it's kind of funny because you can definitely see like the authors that I like, because I've read like 5 books by each of them, kind of thing, like back order books and stuff, like Simone St. James, Darcy Coates.
I saw that. It was like, oh,
yes.
wow, she read all of Simone St. James all at once.
Yes. And so it's kind of funny because I'm like, ooh, I was in like a horror mood that month, or ooh, I was in like a romance mood. And it's just kind of funny to see like, I don't know, the different kinds of books that I ended up reading.
I hope it still shows me that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you should go back and look at if there were trends. Like, did you read more horror in the fall? Did you read more, like, romance books in February? I would be really curious if there was a trend to your reading.
I think you would be disappointed.
Maybe so.
I'll have to look that up, though.
Maybe so. So, Carissa, what then is your goal this year, if it's not a number goal?
I think just to enjoy reading and just read some of the classics on my list. There's some nonfiction on my list too that I do enjoy reading it. Actually, sometimes the nonfiction is almost more of an escape for me than fiction, because
really?
I'm like thinking too much about it as a writer.
Oh.
And I just need to let my mind be free and enjoy what I'm reading.
Okay. So. I think for me this year, well, actually last year, and I really credit you two for this, I feel like you helped me branch out of my kind of rut of reading, and it was really great to explore outside of that. So this year I have a backlist. Like, I literally pulled books and put them on a specific spot in my shelf, and that is like my TBR for the year. So nice. I have a good handful of those that I want to get through. I know I have some upcoming releases that I'll just read no matter what, but I'm challenging myself to read a little more variety. So like little more fantasy, a little more historical fiction, a little more lyrical. So that's my goal.
Yeah, I have some backlist books too I want to read this year. But I do feel like I say that every year, and then there's always some that I don't get to. But there's a few, it's like I'm really looking forward to reading them. I just kind of forget about them there. Yeah. And I'm really excited about them. It's just, there's so many of them.
Well, and some of the books that are on my backlist, I feel like you kind of have to be in a specific mood for, or I just have to say, I'm not going to worry about being in a mood. I'm just going to read it, if that makes sense.
And then you might surprise yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was the right book.
Yeah, I'm reading a Kate Morton book right now. Have you read her, either of you?
I haven't. I was going to ask you who she was.
I've heard of her. I have a book by her. Someone gave me.
She's pretty lyrical. My friend gave it to me. So it's kind of slow reading, but every time I read her prose, I'm amazed at her word choice and her descriptions. So even though it's slower, it is branching me out of my
You can savor
bubble.
it. I do love that.
Yes.
Yeah, it can't
That's
be
how
too much.
V.E. Schwab is for me. Like,
Yeah.
she's very, like, her writing is just beautiful.
What genre does she write?
What is she? Is she YA?
No, she's like fantasy. Because she does middle grade. She's done YA, adult. Have you read, have either of you read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue?
Loved that one. That one was really
Okay,
good.
do you think Kelly would like that? I think she would.
Maybe so.
It might be a little dark, but if you like the lyrical, it's definitely more of a literary leaning fantasy. It's through time periods.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'll try it.
But I think
I'll
it's
add
a
it to
really
my
good
list.
storyline. And
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's fantasy and that, like, the premise is fantasy, but I
Yeah,
don't
but
really
it's
think
not-
of the main story being fantasy.
It's
like,
not
it takes
high
place in the real
fantasy.
world. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Isn't it called grounded fantasy? They
You
call
would know
it
more about that than
grounded
I
in the
would.
real world. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've talked about this before, but when do you find time for reading? As we look at a new year and starting fresh, what does reading look like time-wise for you?
I think I read, well, anytime I'm like in the car waiting on something or doctor's appointments or whatever, I always have something with me to read. Also, like a lot of times my husband, he's more of a TV watcher than I am. And then my son likes to read. My daughter's more like my husband. So they'll watch like Survivor and like certain shows together. And sometimes I'll watch with them, but sometimes I don't want to. And then I'll just sneak upstairs and read like while they're watching the TV.
How about
I
you,
like to
Krista?
read while my husband watches football, which doesn't really happen that often. That's like very cozy for me. We're like both happy, and he's watching football, and it doesn't distract me, and I'm reading my book, but I can still check the score. It's perfect. Actually, but most often I do either audio or just read before bed. Although it's just so, like, I just get so sleepy. Like, reading kind of relaxes me, which I guess is good, but I'm, like, sitting there. I want to know what happens next, but, like, I can't keep my eyes open.
I have the opposite problem. When I'm in a really good book, it'll keep me awake, and I keep looking at the clock like, I need to go to bed, I need to go to bed. But I still fall asleep early. I just stay up later reading. So I read before bed, and then usually if my baby naps, I'll read for a little bit during that time because that's my reset before I pick up my other kids from school and have to get all the way through bedtime. So it's like I need that
Marathon.
quiet afternoon portion before I hit the rest of the night. Yeah, so I'll usually read for a bit there. Possibly take a nap too, I'm not going to lie.
See, I can't do that because I always feel like I need to write during that time, or I sometimes have stuff to get done for work. So it's like, but I should read like maybe one day a week.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. You just have to, like, fill your creative well, and, like, that's how you get inspired.
Yeah, and even in my phases where I'm spending a lot of time writing or editing, I sometimes need that mental break from writing or editing. So I'll take a little break and read for a few minutes and then hop back to it. This is off topic, but are either of your husbands readers?
No.
Yeah, not really.
He'll read nonfiction. Like he's reading a book now about what is it? It's something about being like effective in your to-do list and all that. And I'm like, oh, can you read that and just like summarize it?
Yeah, just tell me.
Because I know I'm not going to read
Funny.
it.
Yeah, he'll listen to some audio, and although we always talk about stories. So I'll tell him about what I'm reading, or we'll like analyze movies or TV shows, and we like break it down, and yeah.
Does he know the various parts of like a plot? Does he have that concept?
Yeah, he's kind of soaked it all up from me.
You've educated him. So my hubs likes podcasts. So like we'll talk about, and I listen to like Dateline podcasts. So I'm like, you will not believe what happened. And then we'll talk about that. But he listens to like sports podcasts, movie podcasts. So he's more of a, podcast listening person.
Yeah, my husband is that too. So I've accepted that I'm the reader and he's not. So it's just our different personalities.
And you read a lot. Did you say, Christie, you read a lot on your Kindle?
I do. Well, my phone, because my Kindles always break. So I just, Kindles, no offense. I use the Kindle app on my phone or an iPad.
Well, your
and that's how
phone's
I
always
usually
with
read.
you.
Yeah, so that's
kind
why I'm
of
like, I
nice.
always have a book
Yeah.
with me.
That's such a neat transportable feature of technology is that you can literally read anytime. It's pretty impressive.
So one thing
Yes.
I did was I made a widget on my iPhone. You can do that with Kindle, and it's like right there in my home screen, and it shows me like the pretty cover of the book I'm reading. So it makes me
Ooh.
more tempted to click on that instead of on social media.
Ooh,
if
maybe
I'm
I need to
waiting
do
for
that.
something.
You can send me a tutorial.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, what about book clubs? Have you ever been in a book club or are you in one now?
Wait, have I been in a book club? I kind of don't think so. They were all unsuccessful.
Really?
We would meet like one time, or we would try to meet, and we all read the book, but then we never got together. Like,
Oh, how interesting.
I
Okay,
guess,
what about...
Okay, I guess technically I'm in one for church we do every summer, but it's for like nonfiction, faith books, or like theology books.
Well, that's
I guess that
still
counts.
a book club.
That counts,
Well,
I guess.
and it forces you to read a book outside of what you would maybe
yeah.
read and talk about it. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
we've
say
read
that's a
some
book
great
club.
stuff.
What about you, Christy?
I have not been in a book club, and I think about joining a book club. A girl that works in a book club, and so I follow her group on Instagram just to see what they're reading. But then she even told me, she's like, we read the book, and then we'll meet, and then we'll talk about it for like 5 minutes, and then we just socialize.
That would bother me so much.
Well, I don't know. But yeah, and I was like, I don't like being told what to read. So I'm very much a rebel at nature. Like, don't tell me what to do. So I don't think I would do good with book clubs because, yeah, if it was a book I didn't want to read, I would just be like, I'm not going to join this month, So I'm not
It's
a
like
team
when you
player as
have
far
to
as
read a
that
book
goes.
for school. Like it could
Yes,
be
you
the
don't
best
want to.
book, but just because you're having to do it for school, it makes you not want to do it.
Exactly.
Okay, I have been I'm not in a book club now, but I love the book clubs I've been in. I will say they're probably more social than they are about
Yeah.
the reading.
It's probably
I
a woman
always read
thing.
The book. It is. It's kind of like people who play bunco, I think. It's like, it's just an excuse to get together. But like both times I was in a book club, they really did provide a community and group of friends that I needed at the time.
And you have something in common.
Yes,
Yeah.
we all liked to read. Now, there were always the people that were like, oh, I didn't read the book. I watched the movie. I read the Cliff Notes version.
Oh my gosh.
I
You're
caught
out
up
of the
on it
group.
at the end. So you have to be very gracious, especially as a reader. You have to really understand not everyone will approach it with the same like seriousness you do. But what I love about book club is that someone else chooses a book or you maybe vote on it or whatever. So it does broaden your horizon.
Yeah.
So that's how, in some ways, I feel like this podcast has been a little bit like a book club. Like last year I read a Neil Gaiman book, and it was the one you read, The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
Oh, see,
So-
I didn't
I
realize you read that one.
Yeah, I read
Yes.
that one too. Okay.
Yes.
What did
I
you guys
liked
think?
it.
Really?
I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it
though it
because
was
it wasn't
creepy.
like so steeped in fantasy. Well, I read a lot of creepy, so it was fine for
It was
me.
very
but-
creepy.
I was okay with the creepy of it. Yeah.
It was just so weird. That was my first adult book by him. I read the Graveyard book for like a YA lit class in college, and then picked up that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was okay with the creepy part of it. Carissa, I could not finish Bone Gap, and it's the weirdest reason why. No, but you have to listen to why.
I just gave a shocked face.
I know, you totally did. It's because I was reading it on my Kindle, and I could not absorb it on my Kindle. I know that I would love it in person, and my library has it, so I just need to go grab it in the library. For whatever reason, some of those books I feel like I need to physically hold.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same way with this Kate Morton I'm reading right now. I think just holding that book makes it feel like a different experience. So
I never have that problem. It's just the audio. I think I'm a visual learner and I'm not an auditory learner. And so I struggle sometimes trying to like catch everything. So yeah, for me, sometimes it's like, yeah, I really need to read this as a physical book, but I've never had that between ebook.
Kindle or not. It's almost like, maybe this is just me, but like when I read my Bible, I generally read my physical Bible.
Yeah.
It's harder for me to read my Bible on my phone for no reason. It's all the same. It's just like
the screen.
the screen or the experience of it. Yeah. So that was my experience.
Did you
with
like
that
it so
one.
far though?
Yes, I did. It was beautiful, and I want to know what happens. I just needed to be in the right headspace on it. So
See, mood
And
readers.
I read a Stephen King book, and it wasn't his scariest one, but I had been talking about Stephen King forever, so I'm proud
Which
of
one
myself
did you
for-
read?
The 11 something 63.
Oh, that's the one.
I don't know that one.
The JFK assassination or something. I've never.
Yep, it's like a time travel JFK. I mean, it's not a clean book.
Does so many genres. I'm just like,
he does.
How does he dabble in so many genres?
Yes, there was a lot of history in it. So anyway,
Cool.
Yeah. So we still have to read Lord of the Rings. So I'm making that our podcast ebook club, just as a heads up for this year.
I need a heads up so I can like mentally prepare for that one.
Yeah, we don't have to do all of that.
Yeah, okay, fellowship.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, just the first one.
That's true.
So, do you guys find any benefits to setting goals, whether that's like a number goal of books to read, or of reading certain books, or reading like those list challenges? Do you find any benefits to those?
Well, yeah, I think it pushes you out of your comfort zone at times. I think whatever your goal is, and this is probably true in anything in life, right? If you set a goal, it's an opportunity to achieve something that may not be always easy to do, or at least that's how I would approach goals. And so it's a little bit of a challenge and a push. So I think there is a benefit to setting reading goals. And I think the smart thing to do for each reader is to assess, like, how do they want their reading life to grow? For me, I want my reading life to grow outside of the books I typically read. So it's not necessarily the quantity I want more of, but I want more variety, and I want a variety of genres. So I think there's a huge benefit in that. And maybe that's like the key for each person, is analyzing what they want to see change.
Like, you're so meta. You're like, I want to expand my horizons. I'm like, I just want to read. I want to make a dent in my TBR before I die, hopefully.
But the thing is, Christy, I feel like you are pretty well read right now. That's the difference between you and I.
You do read a lot of different genres.
I do read a lot of different.
Yeah.
I stick in my lane. I stick in the place I'm
Stay in your
comfortable.
lane.
I want the dopamine hit. I want the feel good. And so I need the push out of it.
Now,
So
see,
that's-
I only read, like, there's some authors who are just like big emotional like punches. Now for those ones, I only read like maybe 2 to 3 a year, because I just can't invest that much emotion in it.
Okay,
Like,
so
it's
for
just
you,
draining.
it's not the genre. It's like the emotional weight.
Yeah.
like sad, happy, what? Depressing?
Like, there was a book I read for a contest one time, and it was phenomenal, but I was like crying in the hotel room on vacation, and my husband was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "It's so sad." And it was just like emotionally draining. Like, I was just like exhausted by the end of the book, and I'm like, okay, I need the dopamine hit. I need the happy ever after when, hit me with something beach read. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate the authors that, go to that work to dig deep for those feelings, but that's just not something that I can read like all the time.
So, okay, question for you guys. Do you ever stop in the middle of a book and then come back to it later?
I do. If I'm reading a really long book and it's taking a lot of like mental attention, or it feels like, kind of like you were saying, like a book that you would really savor, I'll read a little bit of it and then I'll go to something that I can like read really fast.
But is this Kate Morton the 600-page book is a fiction book, right?
It is, yeah. It's about a murder that occurred in, like a family murder that occurred in Australia.
Okay, maybe I need to pick up this author. All of her books sound really good.
I know, she is really good. I really like it, and I want to know what happened. It's just, it feels more detailed, and sometimes I'm like, I don't want to get buried in the details.
Need a brain break.
Take a brain break, read something else, and then come back to it.
See, I don't think I can do that. I think if it's a nonfiction book, I will pick those up and read willy-nilly when I'm in the mood, whatever. But a fiction book, I think I would have to finish it. I don't think I could start another one in the middle of it and then go back. I probably wouldn't go back to it.
See, that's my problem. I just forget to return back to that original book. I'll just be like, oh yeah, that book is like I have on hold at the library is available, so now I have to read that, and then, or I'll buy a new book and I'm like, oh, I have to immediately read this, and then I'll forget. And it's not that I didn't like the other book. It's like, oh yeah, I was reading that. What happened to that?
See, I don't usually DNF either, and so I think that I have like super skimmed books before. In order to finish it to get to the next one, if it's not like fantastic. And I always think that like, it's okay, it's going to redeem itself and it's going to have this amazing ending, and it doesn't. But I still force myself to read it because I hate not finishing something.
See, I need to be more okay with not finishing a book.
I know.
But for me, it's like it's part of the reading goal thing. It's like, so I don't get any credit for reading like 2/3 of this book.
That's true.
I feel like life is so short. I don't want to spend my time reading books that
So
don't have
I need to
true.
start
some
not finishing
value.
Maybe that'll be my book resolution this year. If I don't love it by the halfway through, just put it aside.
Yeah. Or if it's not like benefiting you in some way, right? Like you could not think it's the best, most entertaining book in the world, but you could be like, I love this prose, or I want to know how the author set up this mystery, or whatever on it. I was thinking the other day, it's almost like a TV show, because I kind of felt guilty taking a break from some of these books too. Like, this is weird. Why would I break it up in the middle? But then I thought, sometimes I'll watch multiple shows at one time. Like, we might be watching I don't know, maybe we'll be watching some legal thriller, but we'll take a break and decide to watch some comedy. You know, it's not like you watch the same show always over and over. So
I literally never finish series on a TV. My husband and I were joking about it today. We might make it through 2 seasons, and then that's it. Like, he'll finish some more so than I will, but like Breaking Bad, of course, we finished that one. That one we were able to binge watch most of. And then, yeah, I would say Stranger Things, I'm like behind a season.
What?
I know. Well, because I'm waiting on him and he wants to watch other things. And I'm like, ugh.
see, there you go.
If we watch it together, especially if it's like a limited series or there's only like 1 season out, we'll watch all of it. But if it's something I just started on my own, I rarely finish. Especially
I
if
like
it's
the
like more
limited
than like 2
season ones.
seasons. If it's more than like 2 seasons, forget it.
And so my daughter has started watching watching Supernatural. It's like 50 episodes a season, 32 seasons. Yeah, I'm like, she's going to be 90 years old. She lost interest in it, but it's like she'll start these series and they're so long. I'm like, do you understand how much that is? It's all the same. So I like the limited series that are almost like a movie, you know, where it's like 8 episodes and it's over.
I know we're like switching to talk about TV, but I do think that like there was a time when we were in a golden age of television where streaming was like not oversaturated, and there was like these few really good limited series, and they didn't have to like stretch it out for a bunch of seasons. It was just like, it needs to be 8 episodes. It takes 8 episodes to tell the story. That's the story we're going to tell. We're not going to stretch it out. We're not going to squish it into a 2-hour movie. And they were like really good, but anyways.
So I was literally going to ask, how can you two be okay not finishing a series, but you're okay? You're okay not finishing a TV series, but you won't stop a book in the middle.
Okay, so my defense for that,
for my TV, I'm getting credit on my app for my books read.
Now, see, I don't hold true to that. So I guess my issue is that a book I can skim and get to the end and figure out what happened, whatever resolution.
But are you really reading if you're skimming? Okay,
well,
we'll ask that
I mean, I'm
question
reading
in
and
a
I'm just
second.
like super speed reading fast. Kind of like when you listen to an audiobook and you put it on like 32 speed. It's like, blah, 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 but you know.
Okay, I have done that.
Yeah, see.
For audiobooks, I don't want to finish.
But yeah, series, I just think TV, it's not that it's a waste of time for sure. But for me, I would rather be reading. So if a TV show is not holding me, I'm absolutely okay turning it off.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. That's fair. That's interesting. So, okay, now we have 2 topics to discuss. Is skimming reading?
Mm-hmm. See,
it's more like speed reading. I'm hitting the words.
Okay.
I'm not, that's like flipping pages. But if it's like a long section descriptive, I'm skipping over that.
That does not count.
It does count. Don't be so descriptive.
Count.
Get to the point.
Can you really say you've read the book?
I'm only skimming like a paragraph. It's not like pages.
Oh, that's really funny.
So this is so fascinating to me because the idea of it counting towards the number is what's holding you guys up on finishing, not finishing. So I feel like we got to go next level on why you have a number of books you need to read. Like, what's the reason behind it?
I think I don't really care about the goal. I just like keeping track of it. Like keeping track of what I read. No, I mean, like, it was funny because I was going through the years to see how many books like I read each year. And I think 2016 must have been when I got my first iPhone, maybe? I don't know. But that was when I first started keeping track on Goodreads. And I think I read like 16 books. And I'm like, there's no way I only read 16 books in 1 year. I think my TBR pile is just so long that like I just want to make sure I'm on track to like get through before I'm 90. I mean, you'll never get through it. I get that. But just that I can keep being like, oh, I need to read more books, like to stay on track. Because I think sometimes like life does get in the way and you get busy doing other things. And it's like, I want to make sure I remember to do this.
Okay, what about you, Carissa? Why does it matter the number of books you read? Why does the number of books matter?
I think I have a deep psychological need to like achieve things. It's how I tell myself, I give myself value. Check it off the list. Which is why I'm going to not do it this year.
See, this is why this conversation is interesting, and that's what I want to know from our listeners. I think there probably are listeners out there who need the goal. They need to say, look, I haven't been reading. I'm just going to start somewhere. I'm going to read 3 books this year. Like, coming from nothing, 1 to 3 is great. There are others who are like me who need to broaden their horizons, and there are some like you who probably just need to soak in the joy of reading what they want to read without feeling the pressure to achieve a goal. Because I don't think reading was ever meant to be a goal setting. Or do you think so? Is reading designed to be something to set goals, or is it to expand our horizons?
Both.
Well, it's to enjoy and to learn. And I think you can read for all sorts of different reasons. But I'm thinking about like the Victorians. Did they really have a reading goal? Because I think that is maybe part of our modern society that we're just trying to achieve. It's all about the number. How much can you get done? How much can you produce? That's something I've been thinking a lot about. I went to a really great lecture series by Jason Baxter, and he was talking about that. We're just viewed as like machines, and we don't realize that we think this way, but like how much language how many words seep into our language, that's just comparing us to machines, networking, having a bandwidth for something, like there's so many. And we don't realize how that's really affecting how we view ourselves as people. We're not here to just consume or produce, be productive. So
I think so much is about quantity over quality. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Workforce, everything. It's just like go, 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 go.
I agree. And you had mentioned the Victorian time, and I think in some ways that might correlate to the abundance of information we have now. Just like you were talking about with streaming, the book market saturated too. As soon as self-publishing became available, then anybody can put a book out there. So you have a whole lot of bad books out there.
For good or ill, right?
Yeah. And so fine. And I think that's one struggle I have with reading. I'll start a lot of books that I'll find on like Kindle Unlimited, and they're just not good. So I don't finish them because they're not worth it. But there's so much information, you almost have to be more selective. Whereas back in the olden days, I'm sure there wasn't a reading goal. They just read what they had because that's what they had access to.
That's what was in the library.
That was what was in the library.
And before the printing press, books were like priceless.
Yeah. And you say, and I think this is such a good point, our society is so geared towards these terms, and our whole episode is reading goals, and here we're falling into that same, trap. And maybe if I'm taking anything away from this conversation, it's a pause to think about why we're setting the goals we're setting, and do we need the goals, or is there some other way we can grow and be challenged without it being a number or an achievement? So it's kind of interesting to think through.
Talking about being selective, I was like, because I don't have Kindle Unlimited or the Audible or whatever Unlimited, so I'm very selective on what I read. Like it really often comes. I have a friend in Boston who has similar tastes. Carissa has similar tastes, but Carissa's very literary, prosy, wordy sometimes. So sometimes I have to be careful getting her books because it's like a 500-page book, and I have to make sure I have the headspace for that.
Like Inkheart.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's like 2 sentences, not a whole like chapter. So I think that's a lot of times why I don't DNF, because most of the books I read are good because I get recommendations from people. So I'm a big proponent of the word of mouth to read things. So
that's true.
Yep. That's a good point. So let's talk about audiobooks a little bit. We've already established they count as reading a book, and I would agree with that. What's your experience with audiobooks? Either one.
Christie just tried some.
Carissa always reads audiobooks to clean the house. So she wanted me to read one. So I picked one to read. when I was driving to a volleyball tournament the other day. And it was very difficult for me because I think it was like 5 hours. So it wasn't like a crazy long book, but it was like a more fast-paced, action-y horror book. But it just really threw me out because I have this guy's voice in my ears. And then he switches to this falsetto Southern character. And it completely took me out of the story because it was just oh my word. And it was just completely different. Like, I think I would have been better if it was just like him just reading it, like someone reading me a story. And then it was this house that it was, like I said, a horror. So the house was kind of like alive and the rooms changed places. I had no idea where I was at any given time in this house. Like, I just didn't, and not that, it's not like it's a picture book. Like, I would have seen pictures had I been looking at a physical book, but I just had a really hard time. And then at one point I messaged Krista and I was like, I'm on Pinterest scrolling while I'm listening to this story. Like, this, I'm losing track,
it's bad.
And so I was like, I don't know. But see, podcasts I listen to all the time when I'm driving, and that I can keep up with, but that's also different voices.
Yeah, they're more conversational.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit less
than a narrative,
concentration.
for sure.
But yeah, that is my pet peeve when a male narrator tries to do a female and fails, and I hate it. Like, I've stopped reading books before, listening to a book before, because I just cannot stand it.
I did almost DNF it, but then I was like, no, I promised Krista I would try an audiobook. I'm going to get through this. But no, I didn't love it. Like, I kind of got the gist of the story, but I can't say that, I think if I would have read the story, it would have been much better.
Yeah. So I think my advice, if you want to start audiobooks, would be do a short one. And then try to do one that's a little bit more of like a thriller or suspense, that's more based on the action, but it's got less description. So even I have a hard time with fantasy just on audio. I find it really hard to keep track of everything. You can also try to pick a good narrator, and if you don't like the narrator, just don't listen to it, I guess. Someone who can do the voices, preferably. But also, I find if the narrator of the book, like the character, has a strong voice, I find it much easier to follow. Like things that are in first person, some YA books, if you don't mind.
I think this one too had different point of views. So it always took me a second to realize like who was talking, and so then it was like, oh, this person was in this room last time we left them, this person was in this room. And so that was confusing. And I think if I did one that had like a single narrator, that would be better. Another friend of mine who does audiobooks was like, you just need to do nonfiction. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd fall asleep. But at one point it got glitchy and it like kicked it into high gear. And I was like, wait, because it was reading it super fast to me. I was like, slow down. I can't think that fast. So I had to restart Libby.
I got confused with the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. It had such a strong start. I think. It had such a strong start, but with the audio, I was like, I am so confused right now. But like, I want to know what happens, but I definitely missed some stuff in there. So it was good, but maybe read it in a real book.
Yeah.
Not audio.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about books you're looking forward to reading this next year. And we'll put them in the show notes, but do you have any books you're looking forward to?
I do. I love Megan Miranda, and she is mainstream mystery. I know I think I've read all of her books. She's got one called This Summer. I really enjoyed Jo Wright's last book. And then I've pre-ordered Becky Wade's next one, which this whole thing was a mistake, by the way, because when you asked like, oh, what are you looking forward to? Like I Googled like books coming out in 20, and it was like all these books. And I was like, wait, no. And you can see just by what I've said so far, I have a mystery / scary book, and then like a complete romance. So it's like I'm all over the board already.
You're all over the board, yeah.
And then I saw that V.E. Schwab has one coming out. So I know Chris is probably looking forward to that one. I don't remember the name of it, but I just saw that she had one coming out, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
So
I think I have one Megan Miranda on my shelf that I've been wanting to read, and I
tend to like all of hers. Like they're really.
I haven't read her, so sometimes I don't. Yeah. I'm afraid to pick up, a new author.
A new one. Yeah.
Then you got to read their backlist.
Well, no, more like it's like I'm taking a chance, right? Like it's not being selective, but then you find
but this
gems
is me
that
recommending
way.
one to you.
Yeah, so
you owe me.
I'm gonna pull it off the shelf now.
She's going to guiltily read it now.
That's right.
Speaking of being a mood reader, I'm like really into, I don't know, like thrillers, mysteries right now. I think I'm in my true crime era because I'm like bouncing back and forth between like my audiobook and like, true crime podcast.
Ooh,
I don't know.
okay.
I've been like cooped up in the house. I've had like 3 snow days this week, so maybe I'll pick up that book that
Get
I
there
have
for yourself.
by her. I'm looking forward to The Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young, which just came out this week. And I would already have it if it hadn't been for the snow. I got my gift card for Christmas. I'm going to get that book, and I just haven't made it there yet. I also want to read Middlemarch by George Eliot because I've had so many people tell me I would love it and that it's about women and like growing up in marriage, and that it's widely regarded as one of the best novels in the English language. That's what people
Really?
have said. Yeah, Middlemarch. And so I'm like, I have got to read this. So I even got a nice paperback copy that I can like carry around. And then Jesus Through Medieval Eyes by Grace Hammond. I want to double check her last name, but so that's a nonfiction one. I'm really curious to read.
Okay.
Just how different writers and mystics of the medieval era viewed Jesus and like different metaphors they would use to talk about him. So that goes to my nonfiction goal. And then Name of the Wind is the first pretty longish one in a fantasy series that's supposed to be really good. I started it with my brother as like a buddy read like a couple summers ago, and we just kind of stopped like and got busy and like I took a break, and I was like,
didn't
well,
go back.
I'm waiting for him to catch up. I'll just read something else, and then we just didn't go back to it. But it was so good. And then maybe some Dostoevsky. It might be finally the year that I start that, but we'll see. And then there's also my backlist of Sylvia Moreno Garcia books. So, yeah.
Yes, you got your whole list. And I have some I'm looking forward to. So my romantic suspense favorites, Lynette Eason, Dani Pettrey, and Lynn Blackburn, they all have books coming out. I think Dani Pettrey does this year. So I, of course, will read all those. I love Katherine Center, so I'm looking forward to her new book, The Love Haters. And then on my backlist this year, I need to read The Women. It's a Kristen Hanna book.
I've heard good things about it.
I've heard such good things about it, and I love her books. I mean,
I've never read her.
Oh, you haven't read her?
Mm-mm.
The Nightingale was amazing. I read it a long time ago, though. But yeah, she's
and I keep
good.
seeing that one. I keep seeing her. I started is it The Four Winds?
Uh-huh.
And I didn't finish it, but
you
it was
didn't finish
audio. I mean,
Okay.
I barely gave it a chance. But I was like,
and I
this is
read
depressing.
It is. I mean, it's Depression era, but I had a physical copy and I read it. So I did love that.
That could be it.
And I'm going to read The Fellowship of the Ring this year. So I'm excited.
We need to figure
about
out
that.
when we're going to do that.
I know.
We do. So, and I have another, I actually randomly, I picked up this summer romance book by Annabelle Monaghan, and I couldn't get into it last year for some reason. So I have some books like that I sat down and I want to finish. I just haven't done it yet. So those are my list thus far. We'll see at the end of the year how I do. Oh, Water for Elephants. Did either of you read that one?
I did a long time ago.
Audio.
Is it good?
It was good.
Worth
Yep.
it?
I liked it
It was
then.
a
I
lot
liked it
like
better
the
than the
movie.
movie. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's on my list too. So there you go.
Nice. Okay, I do have one goal. Maybe I shouldn't even say it on the podcast because maybe I
you
won't do
say
it.
It's got to come true.
Okay, I just had this idea. I also knit. It's like my other relaxing hobby. And so I saw this thing where people have been crocheting like a little granny square, and it's like this colorful little square of crocheting, and it coordinates with the cover of a book that they read, and they stitch them all together. But I don't know how to crochet anymore, and so I'm trying to think about how to make a blanket, like knit a blanket for the books that I read. But I'm thinking those temperature blankets where every day based on the temperature. You guys probably don't knit, do you? You do
I could do a scarf and that was about it.
So the temperature blanket is if it's a certain range of temperatures, you assign it a color. So if it's really cold, maybe you'll do white or blue, and then if it's a little warmer, you'll do purple, and then it kind of just the hottest.
Is this
maybe
going to
will be
correlate to the
red.
temperature of your books
Yeah,
if they're
okay.
hot or cold?
Hot or spicy.
Yeah, spice
No.
levels. This is my spicy blanket.
A lot of blue. No, I was thinking like assign a color to like a genre, maybe.
Yeah.
No.
That's fun. Then you could look back at the year and be like, oh,
And I could just
this
do
is
like
what I
little
read.
stripes. But I
Yeah,
don't know. So I
that's
really have
fun.
to think about that. But it could be fun. So
Yeah. Well, and we're going to have a year-end episode where we assess everything we read, what we thought, kind of recalibrate for the next year. So we can see how this works for you. The knitting. So before we end, I do want to ask our listeners if they have any goals. Do they keep reading goals? What do those goals look like? I'd love some feedback on that.
thank you for joining us today on our literary journey. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Lit Ladies Pod and leave a review on your podcast platform. We'll end with a quote by Charles W. Eliot. Books are the quietest and most constant of friends. They are the most accessible and wisest of counselors, and the most patient of teachers.